Okay, let's unpack this. We've pulled together a pretty intense stack of sources,
Mm-hmm.
and it all revolves around this single, very public event, the harassment that two foreign female tourists, Emma and Amina, faced.
All right, at that Post Malone concert in Guwahati, India.
Exactly. So what you have here is a deep dive into the viral online discussion that just exploded after that incident. We're gathering testimony from people who know the region best.
From the diaspora, returning locals, frequent travelers, all of them.
Yeah.
And that's our mission today.
Right.
We want to use this one incident, where the tourist Emma was on video crying, saying, "Keep your hands to yourself, it's disgusting."
I remember seeing that clip.
Yeah, and her friend Amina talked about unwanted touching. We're using that as a jumping off point to explore this much broader, very sensitive, but also profoundly consistent narrative we found.
So we're synthesizing the warnings.
The stark warnings, yeah.
Yeah.
Shared warnings about safety, about the cultural context in India, and we'll also touch on Egypt, which kept coming up as a sort of parallel.
And we should say right up front that the source material here, I mean, it's mainly a Reddit thread that blew up after the video.
Yeah.
It is raw. It's emotional.
Oh, definitely. Shocking at times.
So what we're doing is synthesizing the reported experiences, the theories from users, the really specific anecdotes. Look, it's a demanding listen.
It is.
But it provides this critical window into the lived reality that a huge number of voices were describing online.
And our role here is just to synthesize and structure that. We want to understand the landscape these users are describing, and we're making sure to keep an objective focus on their perspectives, even when the subject matter is this difficult.
Okay, so let's jump right in, because the thing that stands out immediately is just the startling uniformity of the warnings.
It really is.
It wasn't just a few isolated stories. It was this near consensus among the diaspora and people who go back to visit. A consensus about the safety risks.
Yeah, when people online would ask about visiting India, the response from those who knew it intimately was just a resounding don't.
That is just staggering to hear.
And that uniformity is what makes this so powerful. We found multiple instances where Indian colleagues, friends, even a spouse directly warned the person not to visit. Sometimes they even expressed fear about their own trips back home.
Right.
One user wrote that their Indian colleagues, both men and women, said that going back to India was a serious, and this is a quote, strain on their mental health.
A strain on their mental health. They were that specific.
Yes, because of the constant need to be on guard, just the exhausting mental load of dealing with all the unwanted attention from men.
And it wasn't just them. It went deeper, right, into the family.
Exactly. The concern extended deep into the family unit. We saw fathers of daughters expressing this profound discomfort with their girls traveling there alone, even just to visit relatives.
So this isn't just, be careful. This is a deep, pervasive fear.
A fear that affects their mental well-being and dictates their behavior, even for simple family trips. It's really striking.
So this level of negative consensus about one's own homeland. In the sources, where else did users find a parallel for something that serious?
It was almost exclusively Egypt.
Egypt.
Yeah. One user talked to an Egyptian source who told them, look, if you insist on visiting, I will either go with you or I'll get an armed family member to be your guide.
An armed family member.
I mean, that's not a cultural tip. That's a high-level protective intervention just for a standard vacation.
It just speaks volumes about the perceived threat level. And that leads us to the anecdotal evidence of the extreme measures people took because of this fear. These aren't just words.
No, these are life-altering decisions.
We have that story of a high school friend's father. After the horrific 2012 Nirpaya bus rape case, he sent his daughter to live in New Zealand.
And the sources quote him directly. He was, quote, terrified of what would happen to her as a girl growing up in India.
So this wasn't about better schools or anything.
Not at all. It was a permanent move driven by pure fear for his daughter's physical safety. We also heard from a user who left India 12 years ago, got married, and has never, ever stepped back in the country.
Despite family asking her to come back.
Despite, as she put it, relentless requests from her family.
The fear is so strong, it forces Asa self-imposed exile. It separates her from her family. So that begs the question, what is the nature of the behavior that inspires this level of fear?
And that's the pivot point, right? The consistency of these warnings sets the stage. So let's look at the actual behavior being described because it moves beyond just isolated crimes into what's reported as a systemic pattern.
And the most common thing, the one that comes up again and again, is the staring, the leering.
Thrilling phenomenon, yeah.
And this is a very distinct behavior. It's not a casual glance. Users are detailing men in the background, hard staring, their words, at women, at concerts, in videos, even in professional settings.
Right, it's relentless, a nonverbal assault. We saw so many specific incidents, reports of bartenders being stared at constantly, women threatening their Lyft drivers for leering so badly.
And that story about the student counselor's office.
Oh, that was chilling. The user said it was an open concept office, and despite the worker constantly clearing her throat saying it's rude to stare, there was a, quote, rotating cast of 6 to 7 guys staring hungrily at her.
And the user actually defined that environment because of the sustained aggressive nature of it.
Yeah.
They called it a rapey atmosphere.
I mean, that term alone tells you everything about the vulnerability and fear people are reporting in just everyday professional settings.
It really does.
And according to a lot of user theories, this chronic behavior is tied directly to a mob mentality.
Just systemic issues.
Exactly. There's this widespread belief that the men operate in groups, that they're, quote, waiting for the first guy to do something so they can all pounce.
Or waiting to get enough guys together before they surround a woman.
Right. The idea is that the group gives them courage and, maybe more importantly, cover. Anonymity.
And that search for anonymity in a group that connects right into the perceived systemic issues. Users claimed over and over that men do not face repercussions for their actions.
They report that sentences are low, if they even get one at all. And what's worse, the sources cite times when the police apparently refused to take cases seriously.
Or even participate in the violence themselves.
That's the perception of a structural crisis. Now, we're just impartially reporting what users claim, but the sheer frequency of statements like, India is the #1 rape capital of the world, or a woman is raped every 30 minutes.
It reflects a profound level of fear and anger, a feeling that there's no justice.
Right.
And to really underscore this perceived environment of impunity and the brutality being reported, the sources bring up one particularly disturbing case.
The monitor lizard case?
Yeah, the gang rape and killing of a monitor lizard.
And that specific incident, as shocking as it is, was brought up by multiple users, not just as an example of extreme brutality, but as evidence of the perceived impunity in the system.
So they connected it to public health concerns, zoonotic diseases.
They did, but the main takeaway was about the lack of ethical boundaries. The feeling that this kind of extreme violence can happen when you believe there are no consequences.
That's a powerful connection. The disregard for law, for morality, whether it's toward a human or an animal, is seen as proof of a systemic breakdown. So if that's the environment, what do the sources say is underpinning this? Why do users believe this behavior is so common?
We have to look at the self-reported explanations about gender roles and masculinity. One of the most critical anecdotes was a conversation a user had with their Indian coworker about, what it means to be a man.
Okay.
And this coworker, he proudly explained that men harass and commit violence at will.
And his reasoning was tied directly to masculinity, wasn't it?
Yes. He claimed that being tamed would mean they lose their manhood masculinity. He said if you curb those desires, you would no longer be a man.
So if that mindset is culturally reinforced, it's a profound internal justification for predatory behavior.
It is.
And this alleged cultural justification, it offers a really critical counterpoint to the experience of the diaspora, which brings us to what users called the diaspora paradox.
Right.
They kept asking, why do Indian men outside of India, say in Canada or the US, behave, in a socialized way, but those in India seem so detached from those norms?
And this is where we have to synthesize the user theories. Is it about economic migration leading to better socialization? Users guess that migrants who grew up in the West are far detached from the culture and stigmas of the home country.
So the idea is that outside of India, you have functional legal systems and social norms that actively curb this behavior.
Through punishment and social shame, yeah.
So the paradox suggests it's not an innate characteristic, it's the environment, the social and legal structure within India itself that fosters, or at least fails to stop, these behaviors.
Precisely. It's an environmental argument, not a genetic one. And while we've been focused on tourists, the consensus from users was clear. The situation is significantly worse for local women.
They're described as being, stuck with these men indefinitely.
Yes, and that leads to the horrifying reports of acid attacks, fatal assaults, being burned alive. The sources are very clear. Tourists face intense harassment, but local women bear the heaviest, most permanent burden.
But the sources also remind us this isn't strictly limited to gendered assault. We also have to include the reports of general hostility and theft that affect male travelers, too.
Oh, absolutely. It frames it as a broader issue of tourist vulnerability. We see these anecdotes of male travelers taking extreme precautions.
Like the liquor store owner who wears old clothes and brings zero valuables when he travels back because he's afraid of being kidnapped.
Or another user who mentioned that when their family goes to Pakistan, which was cited as a similar regional issue, they take old phones, leave all their gadgets behind.
Because of a high chance of being robbed at gunpoint.
Exactly. And even the smaller day-to-day things reveal this hostility. We heard about an electric razor and AA batteries being stolen from a carry-on by a gate agent in India.
Right. And the male traveler who said he was constantly followed by a train of men asking for money, he described that as the most hostile experience he'd ever had.
Even compared to being robbed at gunpoint in Rio.
Wow.
So the overarching feeling, it seems, regardless of gender, is one of constant vulnerability, of being seen as a transaction. You're just a source of money or things to be taken.
So what does this all mean when we put the India discussion into a wider context? I guess that's where Egypt comes back in.
Yes, Egypt is repeatedly named right alongside India, the top two countries for consistency of complaints and difficulty for female travelers.
It's a stark parallel in the source material.
It is. It suggests that maybe regional factors are at play: rapid urbanization, economic disparity, specific cultural attitudes toward women, who knows?
And the specific incidents cited from Egypt reinforce the seriousness of the threat. Users brought up the 2011 mob assault of journalist Lara Logan.
Which was described as haunting. And then right after that, a user reported being sexually assaulted twice in the span of 3 days in Egypt.
So it just reinforces this idea that these are regions where danger to female travelers is pervasive. It's expected by those who have been there.
And just like with India, the complaints aren't only gendered. The sources highlight general tourist hostility in Egypt, constant scams, hidden fees being followed.
And that really depressing observation that tourists are viewed as walking, talking money to be taken.
It's dehumanizing. The traveler is never seen as a person, only a wallet.
And we did see brief mentions of other places, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Jamaica, where similar issues were reported.
But India and Egypt just dominated the discussion. They were the most consistent sources of traveler complaints, by far.
Which brings us to this core ethical debate that was raised in the sources, the question of traveler responsibility.
Yeah, and there's a real tension here that you, the listener, have to confront. On one hand, you have users saying emphatically, you are not safe and protected.
Comparing visiting to jumping into a snake pit, basically saying women should just stay away.
Right, a practical safety-first stance. But then, countering that, is this deep sense of dejection that women should be able to walk freely everywhere on Earth.
It's the ideal versus the reality. The ideal of universal safety clashing with the stark reported reality that some places might just present an unacceptable systemic risk.
It's a very difficult conclusion to come to. The sources just reveal this profound disconnect. You have the cultural beauty, the amazing architecture, history, nature.
Everything a traveler would want to see.
Right, versus the horrifying reported reality of hostility and violence. And that conflict causes this deep sadness, this dejection, even for people who grew up there and have to decide whether to stay or to leave.
Absolutely. The core takeaway, really, from synthesizing all this material is that the high incidence of assault and harassment seems to be amplified. It's not just individual bad actors.
No, it's a perceived cultural system that users claim fosters, justifies, or simply ignores these actions.
Creating a crisis of safety for locals and tourists alike.
And that brings us to the final thought we want to leave you with, which comes right from that core tension in the sources.
Sure.
If so many decent people from a culture feel they have to permanently leave their own homeland just to ensure their own mental safety or the physical safety of their children, what responsibility do international travelers, or even organizations like performing artists who host these huge concerts, what responsibility do they have when they choose to engage with that culture economically?
That's a heavy question. Should travel and economic exchange just be about the individual experience? Or does it carry some kind of moral weight when you're confronting such widespread reports of systemic risk?